Okay, let's jump straight in. If you're tuning in, chances are you're thinking about a pretty big goal, the CCIE certification. It really is one of the benchmarks in networking. Signals a level of expertise lots of people aim for.
Absolutely. And you've shared the source with us. It basically lays out a whole strategic roadmap, a blueprint for how you might tackle this thing. So our mission here in this deep dive is to pull out the most crucial, realistic, and expert-backed steps right from this material, specifically for you.
Exactly. And this source, it gets into the strategy, the tools, the mindset for both the core exam and the lab exam. Doesn't matter if you're looking at enterprise, security, data center, whatever track, we're sort of exploring it like a map together. And why are we doing this deep dive just for you? Well, trying to figure out the CCIE path from like a million different places online, you can get overwhelming fast.
Right.
We want to get you right to the key insights that this specific roadmap offers.
Okay, so let's get into it. The source kicks things off with what it sees as the absolute first step, choosing your CCIE track. It lists the main ones: enterprise infrastructure, security, data center, collaboration, service provider, and wireless. 6 options there.
And the roadmap's got a really strong opinion here, doesn't it? It specifically warns you not to pick a track just because it's, hot right now or trendy.
Yeah, it's pretty firm on that. The key, according to this source, it's all about choosing based on your actual strengths. So if your day in, day out work is deep in routing and switching, then enterprise is presented as, well, the obvious choice.
Makes sense?
Or if you're constantly dealing with firewalls, VPNs, maybe zero trust stuff in your job, then security is framed as your logical path.
That clicks, especially when you think about just the practical side of it.
Yeah.
The source even says, look, a big reason people fail is they pick a track they don't actually use every day.
Yeah.
Or maybe one they can't easily lab up and practice for.
Right.
So the advice is really actionable. Match your track choice to what you're doing now in your career. That real-world experience, that's your head start.
And what's powerful there is how it immediately ties that strategic choice to the reality of, well, actually doing the work, doing the labbing. It pushes back against chasing what seems popular and says, no, build on what you've already got. That perspective feels really important.
Okay, so you've locked in your track. The next huge piece, according to the source, is really understanding the exam structure itself. It breaks the CCIE down into 2 very distinct parts.
Right. So first up, you've got the core exam. The source describes this one as a 120-minute written test. It's focused on the theory, the concepts. Passing this is basically your ticket. It qualifies you to even book the lab exam.
And then comes the big one, the legendary lab exam. The source paints a pretty clear picture here. It's an intense 8-hour, hands-on, practical beast.
Uh-huh.
And it's split, right? 3 hours for design scenarios, and then a solid 5 hours for configuration and troubleshooting.
And this is where the source really emphasizes the nature of the challenge. It says the lab is where things get real. You're not just being tested on stuff you memorized or basic configs you crammed.
Yeah.
You're being judged on real-time skills. The source is very specific. You've got to be good at fixing things, optimizing performance, and implementing automation.
Fixing, optimizing, and automating. Wow, that focus really shows how the CCIE keeps up with what modern networks actually need. And that flows right into what the source calls the absolute necessity of lab practice. It just flat out says, lab practice is king.
It really seems this roadmap can't stress that enough. You absolutely need a dedicated lab environment, non-negotiable. Could be physical gear at home, but, more often these days it's a virtual setup.
And the source helps out here, listing tools it recommends.
Yeah, it mentions EVE-NG, says it's powerful, supports multiple vendors, Cisco VIRL, which is Cisco's own platform, and GNS3, which it highlights as being particularly good if you're doing lots of routing practice.
And the way you approach labbing, it's not just random tinkering, right? The source pushes for a structured method. Start small, build up complexity, eventually tackle full blueprint scenarios.
Exactly.
It even suggests practicing topic by topic, kind of layer by layer, like nail down BGP and OSPF first, then move on to NAT, ACLs, VPNs, and maybe layering QoS, multicast device hardening.
Yeah.
And importantly, bring in network automation too, using things like Python and Ansible.
That layering idea is interesting, isn't it? It suggests building complexity methodically, kind of like how you'd approach a real project or a tough troubleshooting ticket.
Yeah.
And there's a pro tip the source throws in that feels absolutely vital for performing under pressure. You have to simulate the real exam conditions.
Meaning practice with a timer.
Precisely. It advises doing full 8-hour mock labs, start to finish, at least 4 or 5 times before your actual exam day. Now, that's a serious commitment, but the roadmap clearly sees it as essential for building that stamina, that ability to solve problems when the clock is ticking like crazy.
So if timed, full-scale labs are the how you practice, the what you practice with is also key. The source has a strong stance here. Use premium resources only. The logic is, look, you're aiming for an expert level, your time's too valuable to mess around with basic or, frankly, subpar stuff.
Right, and this is where it points you directly to resources known for being high impact, for having that depth. It lists I&E, calling it best for expert-level CCIE labs.
Okay.
Cisco Press books, especially for the core exam theory. Boson XM for practice tests, one of the best practice test engines, it says. Micronix boot camps for really concentrated, intense training periods. And Cisco 360, if it's available for your track, is called Gold.
And it adds official documentation to that list too, which, yeah, makes total sense. Getting really comfortable navigating Cisco's official docs has got to be key when you're in the lab and might need to look something up quickly. This focus on high-quality, authoritative resources definitely feels like a core part of this roadmap. Quality over quantity, straight up.
Absolutely. It's about going straight for materials built for the level the exam demands and knowing where to find the ultimate source of truth in the official docs.
Okay, so moving past the specific practice techniques and the tools, the roadmap puts a lot of emphasis on the structure around your study. Building a realistic study timeline. Presented as absolutely essential. It even gives a sample flow.
Yeah, the sample timeline it lays out gives you a pretty clear idea of the commitment involved, like months 1 to 2, all about core exam, prep reading, theory, practice quizzes.
Right.
Then months 3 through 6, it shifts hard to focused, hands-on labs daily, tackling those individual topics layer by layer like we talked about.
Okay.
Month 7 and 8 are specifically carved out for those intense, full-length, timed mock labs. And then month 9 is for final review, patching up weak spots, and just getting your head right.
That sample breakdown really underscores that this is not something you just wing. The source is practical about time too, suggesting maybe 2-3 hours daily if you've got a full-time job. Or aiming for a more intense 6 to 8 hours daily with breaks if you're lucky enough to study full-time.
Yeah.
It also recommends actively tracking your progress, what topics you've covered, how many hours you've put in. Using tools like, say, Google Sheets or Trello, that structure seems critical for keeping momentum over so many months.
Framing it as planning your time like a pro, like the source does, it just acknowledges that the CCIE is a marathon, not a sprint. Without that kind of structured, tracked schedule, man, it would be incredibly easy to lose steam or fall behind on such a long journey.
And that long journey, it naturally brings up the final, really crucial point in this roadmap, mindset. The source says it point blank, mindset matters. It makes a pretty bold claim, actually. A lot of candidates fail, not because they don't know the tech, but because they crack under pressure or just burn out.
It's interesting. It really highlights the psychological side of this whole thing. The key points it mentions for shoring up your mindset are like avoiding comparing yourself to others. Everyone's path is different, right?
Right.
Taking regular breaks to actively fight off burnout isn't seen as a luxury, it's a necessity. And just prioritizing basic health, eating decently, getting enough sleep, exercising that's directly linked to keeping your brain sharp and focused during intense study, and of course on exam day itself.
Cresting your prep when you finally walk into that exam room is the last bit of mindset advice. The source acknowledges, yeah, the lab is tough, it's designed to push you hard, but it reminds you that you're tough too, assuming you've actually followed the plan. It's about that mental resilience being just as vital as your technical chops in that 8-hour pressure cooker.
Connecting it all back, it's pretty clear the source isn't just handing you a technical checklist. It's laying out this whole holistic approach that wraps in your physical and mental state as, like, fundamental parts of succeeding. That depth is something people often miss when they only focus on the commands and protocols.
So, stepping back and looking at this entire strategic roadmap from the source, the core message seems really clear. The CCIE, it's way more than just getting a certification number on your resume.
Yeah, it's about hitting an elite level of expertise. One that, according to this source, involves designing the actual backbone of modern digital transformation. You're proving you can do more than just configure stuff. You can build it, fix it, optimize it, automate complex systems, all under serious pressure.
And mastering the steps outlined in this source, picking your track smartly based on strength, really getting the demanding two-part exam structure, absolutely committing to hands-on labbing with the right tools and realistic timing.
Leveraging only those top-tier resources.
Right? Building and sticking to a solid, realistic timeline, and crucially, cultivating that resilient mindset, mastering these specific steps, is presented as the definite way to get to that elite status.
It's a really comprehensive framework. It weaves together the technical knowledge, the practical application, resource strategy, time management, and, personal resilience into one single, though very challenging journey.
Okay, so based on this source's heavy emphasis on, real-time skills,
Yeah.
optimizing automating networks, and designing that backbone of digital transformation, here's something for you to maybe chew on as you plan your own path.
Yep.
What is this really intense hands-on journey which is so laser-focused on those specific evolving skills? What does it tell us about how the definition of networking expertise itself is actually changing? What does it really mean to be an expert today when tech and roles are constantly shifting? And maybe what specific new challenges or even opportunities does hitting this level of skill uniquely prepare you for in the current landscape?
That's definitely something to think about as you prepare to make your own deep dive into the material itself.